Court, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Like I told you in your opening, this is going to be a simple case. It was made a lot more simple because, as you've heard today, they've admitted liability. They admitted that this accident was the fault of the defendant, Alfredo Correa, who was working in the course and scope of Weber at the time. So it's been made a lot more simple because really today, you're only going to be considering one thing, and that is how badly was Eric Infante hurt because of the collision on May 25th, 2010. Now what you've heard from defense counsel has been, this is just a fender bender. That's all it is, it's a low impact accident. But as you've seen today, and as you've heard today, it's a lot more than just a fender bender. We're talking about two industrial trucks, an F-150 and an F-250. As you heard from the witness stand today, there were 3 collisions, the third of which had been married together, to use the words of Mr. Paul Messick. They were stuck together, and they actually had to use a third vehicle to pull the vehicles apart in order to not cause any further damage to the trucks. That doesn't sound like a low-impact collision. We're trying to make it sound like, oh, it was just a task, it was just a task. Definitely not the case. These are the photos, and we're going to take these photos back with you into the jury room and look at them and examine them and realize that we're talking about a significant impact here. And as you've heard today, it's not like Eric Infante was just sitting in his truck and he got rear-ended. With the first impact, he was working on his paperwork. He was getting his reports together. The first impact took him by surprise. As you heard him testify yesterday, during the second impact, he was picking up his papers, he was cleaning up his coffee, so his body wasn't just sitting there. His body was contorted, and as it was contorted, the second impact happened. That makes a difference, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. It makes a difference because it's one thing if you're sitting there, but if your body's moved in a different position and you get impacted, it's going to cause a different kind of damage. It's going to cause a different kind of injury. And then there was a third impact. And these 3 impacts weren't just minor impacts. They said nobody's trying to say that they were going 50, 60 miles per hour. I mean, as you've seen, they were on an overpass, under construction. It's all dirt. They were 10 to 12 feet off the ground. So no one's trying to say that anybody's zipping around up there. But even at lower speeds, the size of the trucks, the position that Mr. Infante was in, these collisions caused real damage. And you heard Mr. Infante talk about that yesterday, about how seriously he was hurt. He filled out an accident report that same day, an accident report that you're going to get to see, where he talked immediately about being in pain, back pain and shoulder pain. And then the very next day, he went to Dr. Calvin Hong and got treatment. As you will see through his medical records, he treated for 6 months with Dr. Calvin Hong to try to get his neck and his back and his shoulders better, to no avail. And during the course of that 6 months, he was referred for other treatment. Let's talk a little bit about his treatment. I'm going to tell you right now, you don't need to worry about writing down numbers, because one of the things that you're going to take back with you is a medical summary. It's in the evidence that will have all this laid out for you. But let's talk a little bit about his treatment. He first went to Total Rehab. Total Rehab is Dr. Calvin Hong, the chiropractor, who did stretches, massages, hot and cold therapy, electrostimulation. You'll see all that in the records. Because of that, because of the treatment and the pain that Eric Infante was in, he was referred to Universal MRI. Universal MRI did a lumbar MRI then, where you will see that he had multiple disc bulges in his lower back. From there, because of the pain and because the therapy wasn't sufficient to help him, he was treated by Dr. Bobby Perez, a board-certified pain management doctor. Dr. Bobby Perez gave him some medication, and then when that didn't help, did not just 1, but 3 lumbar epidural steroid injections to try to help Eric, to try to prevent the pain. And unfortunately, as you've heard him say, it would work. It would work for a couple of weeks, but then the pain would come back. So he'd have another one. And it would work for a couple of weeks, and then the pain would come back. have to have another one. The same thing, it would work, and when the pain came back, there's a much bigger problem. And that's when he was referred to Dr. Siddiqui. Now, Dr. Siddiqui is a surgeon. Dr. Siddiqui looked at him and also sent him to Opus Medical to get a cervical MRI in his neck. And what the records are going to show is the MRI in his neck shows a herniation, a couple disc bulges and a herniation in his neck. Eric Infante has objective problems in his back and his neck. And I don't know what the defense wants you to believe that it's just, it's not anything. It's real. It's in the MRIs. And as you heard Dr. Grider testify yesterday, he said that there was real impingement that he saw in those MRIs. Dr. Siddiqui recommended a discogram, 5 lumbar discograms performed by Dr. Pervez. And hopefully that will help Eric figure out what is wrong with him and what is wrong with his lower back. Because as you saw yesterday, Eric Infante is still in pain because of this. Now, judge has just gone through the jury charge with you. Those are the questions that you'll be answering in today's case. The first one's easy. Past medical. What's the amount of the medical bills that Eric Infante incurred as a result of this wreck? Now, what the defense is going to want you to believe is that none of it. They're going to try to say that none of this is because of this wreck. But if you listen to the testimony, you look at the affidavits, you look at the evidence that you've been presented, there's been no testimony that all of the services provided by Mr. Infante's treaters is not medically necessary. And as you've heard, they're going to try to say that, oh, well, he had other wrecks. He had other wrecks, and that's probably where this is all stemming from. But as Mr. Infante testified yesterday on the stand, he was fine. He treated for those wrecks, and then he was fine. The day before the accident, he was okay. He was 100%. He was able to do his job. So what we'll be asking for you to fill in for past medical is the cost of his medical bills. That's it. $39,117. That's what we'll be asking for his medical. With regards to his future medicals, you've heard about this discogram that he was done. If you look in the records for Regional Specialty Clinic, the last page is an estimate by Dr. Bobby Pervez on what the cost of this 5 lumbar discogram will be that Dr. Siddiqui said was medically necessary. The cost of this 5 lumbar discogram is $15,000. And that's exactly what we'll be asking you to put in that blood right there. Now the rest of this, it's a little bit harder for you to calculate. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, because how do you put a dollar figure on someone else's pain suffering, on someone else's mental anguish, on someone else's impairment? Unfortunately, that's exactly what we need you to do. And no doubt that you will take your job fully seriously, because the only way that Eric can be compensated is by money. We can't give him a healthy back. We can't give him his healthy leg again. All we can do is give him money to try to put him in as close a condition as he was before the wreck as possible. So let me talk to you about Eric Infante's pain and suffering and his impairment. You heard him testify yesterday about all the things that he couldn't do that he used to be able to do before the wreck. You heard him talk about how specifically he felt like he was going in a school zone while everybody else around him was driving 40, 50 miles an hour. Everything he was doing was slowed down. Now what the defense wants you to believe, well, he worked. He worked before the wreck. He worked after the wreck, so he must be okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, as you see, yesterday I wasn't feeling 100%. Today I'm not feeling 100%, but I still show up to work because I have to. Mr. Infante still shows up to work because he has to. And as he told you yesterday, yeah, he goes to work. He's got to do it slowly. He's got to do it more carefully. And the only reason all that is because of the wreck on May 25th, 2010. Before he was struck by Alfred Korea, he was fine. And there's a dollar value to that. There's a dollar value to the fact that he may not be able to do things at the same pace, at the same speed that he used to be able to. There's a dollar value to the fact that he has to make adjustments that you and I and everyone else don't have to make because they were not hit by Mr. Korea on May 25th, 2010 when the overpass hit. So this is what we're asking for. For the date of the accident, May 25th, 2010, so his last day of treatment. May 31st, 2011. That's 371 days. Asking for $100 a day. That's $37,100. Now, ladies and gentlemen, or after that, the day after he stops treating, till the first day of trial yesterday, June 24th, 2013, you are then looking at 754 days. You're looking at 2 years of Eric Infante suffering with these back pains and these neck pains. And for that, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm only asking you for $10 a day. So what we're asking you for pain and suffering and mental anguish. $44,000. Same thing with impairment. Said impairment is having to make those adjustments. Pain and suffering is what he mentally endured. What he had to literally suffer through, the physical pain that he had to endure in all that time. The 3 years since his accident occurred. That past impairment is all the adjustments he had to make, all the things that he couldn't do, all the things that were harder for him to do. I will be asking you for the same amount. The figures for future pain and suffering and future impairment, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to need you to decide to do what you think is fair and just for Eric in that regard. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is Mr. Infante's only day in court. It is his opportunity yesterday to tell you about the injuries and damages he sustained because of the May 25th, 2010 collision that they admitted was their fault. So this is his only opportunity. He can't come back in a year, 5 years, 10 years. This is it. So we must award him now for what happened back then and what he's had to endure since then. And I have every faith in your ability to do so. Thank you so much for your time.